elegance and speed, I think it was. So I'm not introducing, I'm introducing Lisa from Zuydam, who's our next speaker. She coincidentally loves horses and does dressages, and received a horse from her husband earlier this year, and immediately thereafter broke her leg. So I'm hoping she'll break her leg with this particular talk, and over to you, Lisa. Thanks very much.
Sorry, I'm quite short, so. The way to inform consumers about your brand and your products is to advertise. As competitors race to become the leader in the market, you need to ensure that the creativity that you expend in creating your advertisement is within the allowed bounds, and that you color within the lines, so to speak. But what lines, you may ask? With the development of intellectual property in Africa, African countries are adopting and adapting various codes, or advertising codes. They're also adapting and adopting advertising laws and bringing into place regulatory bodies which govern advertisements. Here is a snapshot. Oh, sorry, not so good with my left and right. There we go. Here's a snapshot of some of the African countries which have either got advertising laws, or they have advertising laws, a code, and a body which enforces those, that code. You'll see, obviously, some countries are a little bit further in the race than others. So South Africa, Kenya, even Nigeria and Zimbabwe are a little bit further on the mark than, for example, somewhere like Uganda or Tanzania, where at this stage there are only laws in place and there's no body or code in place. But taking a little bit of a closer look, in Ghana, for example, there is an Advertising Association of Ghana, which has an advertising practice code. This is actually quite a comprehensive code that even covers promotions. It has very specific provisions, or general provisions as well as very specific provisions, dealing with slimming advertisements, tobacco products, medicines, financial products. So there's quite a wide range that is covered and governed by it. That being said, though, there have, of course, still been some advertisements which have not colored within the lines, so to speak, and have caused quite an amount of public outcry. And there's been quite a call for there to be an advertising laws being brought into effect. And there's currently the Advertising Standards Authority Bill, which is before Parliament in Ghana. Mozambique currently has a publicity code that's in force, but hot off the press, they've recently just published a new publicity code, which will come into play at the end of November. This is, again, quite a comprehensive code, and it covers quite a wide range of goods, well, general provisions as well as specific provisions with regards to either alcohol, advertising, finance products. So it's just something to bear in mind if you are thinking of creating an advertisement and it's going to be flighted in Mozambique. Remember that there are some lines that you must consider. And then Kenya, of course, has one of the most established, well, behind South Africa, laws and code governing advertising. There is a code of advertising, marketing, and practice. There's also very stringent laws in place governing advertising, both in terms of the Constitution and the Consumer Protection Act. And they have an advertising standards committee that's actually issued quite a number of rulings over the years. So there have been quite a few competitor complaints, because that's normally where we would see advertising where one competitor doesn't like the other one's advert. Maybe it's causing too much traffic, maybe they're getting too many sales from it, and they want to always try and rein them in and not let the one have better claims than the other. But there are in my view, five basic principles that you should always bear in mind when you are advertising. And and of course this applies generally to most African countries, and that is that it's honest and truthful, and this ties in with it being capable of being substantiated. So you can't just make a claim without there being something to back it up. It must be decent or not inoffensive. Not misleading, yes. So no fish with giant shark fins. It's actually got to be a fish. Take care when advertising alcohol products. There are a number of countries which have specific provisions, either in advertising code or general laws that deal with alcohol advertising. And of course, in South Africa, that this is true. And also watch out for gender or age sensitivity. So watch what you say about children, how you market toward children, and also about how you portray women. And that, of course, brings me to an example of an advertisement in Mozambique that was flighted some time ago. As you can see, it was for a beer company, Laurentina Preta, and it's Mozambique Cerveja. And basically, it was if you translate it, it says, "This Preta has gone from good to better." Preta has a double meaning because it means black for beer, but it can also mean a black woman. So that then caused quite an outcry, specifically amongst gender groups, given that those were different lines and not quite the right lines that they were using to create the advertisement. In Nigeria, there's recently been an advertisement by one of the political candidates, Goodluck Jonathan, who's also, again, sparked quite an outcry, basically indicating why you should vote for him, and that's because he's less likely to pass away anytime soon, and because there have been a number of statesmen who have died while in office and have cost the state money for their burials. So the other candidate, who's 72, chances aren't as good, so it seems like that's why Jonathan wants you to vote for him. It has caused an outcry in Nigeria because it is considered culturally insensitive to predict or speculate about somebody's death. I'm sure political candidates wouldn't want someone else speculating about their death either. And then in Kenya, this is actually ASC ruling, so an Advertising Standards Committee ruling. It dealt with two mobile phone companies, one represented by the green SIM card and the other one represented by the orange SIM card, and essentially was dealing with tariffs, and the one was claiming to obviously have cheaper tariffs than the other. Unfortunately, this advertisement was found, well, there were basically two claims, that it had misleading claims, and secondly, that it was comparative advertising, but that it was disparaging. So in Kenya, while you are allowed to have comparative advertisements, they just must not be disparaging. And there must also be substantiation for what you are claiming, and you must also be comparing apples with apples. So you must be comparing within the same sphere. And in this case, it was found, and essentially it dealt with the uses, and you can't quite see it from here, but there was a little asterisk that was used next to that 4-, which basically then at the very bottom in small writing said that it applied only to peak rates. Now, the ASC found that that was misleading because it wasn't clear to a consumer that it related only to peak rates, and that when you use a disclaimer like that, it's not sufficient if you just have this asterisk and then some tiny writing at the bottom where somebody's got to find what the disclaimer is. They also found, though, that it was a comparative claim which was in breach of the code because it was disparaging. And then linking to another advertisement, and this is not the actual advertisement that appeared, but rather at least an example, and it dealt with, and it's recently just come out, it's come out in the last few weeks in Kenya, and it was to do with, obviously, Pampers being the product, and it's the Pampers Baby Dry specifically, and it's Kenya's driest diaper with stretchy sides, and that appeared on the front of the shelves in stores, and obviously a competitor, because this is how it goes, they complained about this, saying, how can you say that you are Kenya's driest diaper? First of all, because you are making a misleading claim, and secondly, because you are, again, engaging in comparative advertising. Interesting out of this case is one side was represented, and the winning side, was represented by a firm of attorneys, whereas the complainant was not represented. And this actually came out in the ASC's decision because they, and sorry to punt why you need us attorneys, they basically said that the claim had, well, they'd set out 4 claims, and they'd not specifically given enough detail to substantiate those claims. And they said, where you don't give the ASC sufficient detail and you don't give enough information to substantiate your claim and why you, and when I say claim, I mean the allegation as to why it breaches the code, then they also don't have enough to work with as to why an advertisement should be pulled. So in this instance, however, it was found that this claim is okay and that they can keep their advertising as Kenya's driest diaper with stretchy sides because they could provide significant amount of evidence with substantiation with what they call the re-wet test, which is essentially how much water is held within the core of the diaper, and I won't bore you with the dirtiness and the dirty diaper, but they essentially found, because there was substantiation, they said that it's okay, it is a comparative advertisement, but it's okay because you have substantiated so you've substantiated and it is within the same sphere. And they also provided sufficient information about who's actually the leaders in the market, because they also claimed that it essentially was only relating to 2 people in the market. And they said yes, but there are only 2 competitors really that control 80% of the market. And that is me. Any questions?
Any questions on advertising in Africa? Chance. Lisa, I just want to say thank you very much. Very quick and elegant overview of advertising law in Africa. I think this is one area of law that's a kind of subset. So you get trademarks, patents, designs, but ad law is part IP related, part regulatory. It's quite nice to know that there are provisions into Africa. I think they're there to assist you. Of course, if you want to dare to be bold, as Nick says, then you've got to test them. But thank you very much for that, Lisa. There is a question. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, just the one quickly.
Doug.
On the political advertising, in Nigeria you'll find that a lot of people, particularly in politics, advertise on other people's behalf. And you see that in the recent elections, where people obviously trying to look for support will then place adverts that maybe Goodluck Jonathan had nothing to do with. How does he get around that, or how does he sort of protect himself in that particular aspect? I'm sorry, I'm Doug de Villiers from Interbrand.
So in Nigeria, there's actually, APCON is the body that essentially governs advertisers, and you're actually supposed to get approval for advertisements before they're flattered. So how this one got passed, I'm not quite sure, and obviously there are things that slip through the cracks. But that being said, to protect yourself, I suppose if someone's advertising on your behalf, the only things you can really do then is, one, be insistent on you see the advertisement before it's flattered. But if they're advertising and it's not you instructing somebody, then I suppose the only thing you can do is to hit back with another campaign as to why it's not you and why it's not associated with you. So basically distance yourself from it and distance yourself from somebody. I don't know if anyone else has any other ideas on that, but that's the only thing I would suggest. The other option is, of course, Mr. Goodluck Jonathan himself, if he wasn't the one that posted the advert, is he could, of course, submit a complaint through APCON and ask that it be removed and that there be a statement issued in that regard.
Another question. Yep.
Sorry, now I'm doing this from the floor.
Hi, I'm Ross from Versify.com. My question is, where is the line of being clever and being, over the top? So we've seen Hunt Lascaris is very good at it with the BMW beats the Benz, or the Nando's ad with the BE deal, and it's obviously Jacob Zuma. On the one side, where is there a line? And on the other side, is there recourse if you're on the receiving end, so BMW, or Mercedes-Benz rather?
Okay, so that goes back to those basic principles of what should govern your advertising. I mean exactly like the Nando's ad, you've got to just see, is it offensive to anybody? Is anyone offended by it? And just because something provokes a little bit of political discourse or it's maybe a little bit uncomfortable doesn't mean that it's offensive. So that's something to bear in mind on sort of the Nando's ones, the Benz and BMW. Again, if there's again, it all goes about substantiation. So if you can substantiate why yours is better, then you're allowed to say it. And again, you just can't be disparaging. And obviously, it applies slightly differently in each different country. South Africa has their own guidelines. But if you find yourself on the receiving end and you believe this cannot be correct, and you can't say that about my brand, well then, that's why you come to attorneys, and then we can file an advertising standards complaint with the body and ask that the advertisement be removed from all media.
Right. Thank you, Lisa, to answer your question. Thanks, and thanks, Doug. Sorry I didn't see you in the corner there.